Newcastle and Sunderland are so close to each other that I thought we may as well include the entire county. So here are the stadiums of Tyne and Weir, England. Starting off at Kingston Park, which is the home of rugby in Newcastle. And when I say rugby, I mean both rugbies. The Union Club are the big boys here though. They are the Newcastle Falcons, formerly known as Newcastle Gosforth. I can see why they changed their name. They own the stadium and are going strong in the first tier of rugby union. Whereas the rugby league club, Newcastle Thunder, is in the third tier of rugby league and is struggling to survive. The stadium has a rather interesting design. Well, 3 of the 4 sides are fairly straightforward, but over to the east it sort of just looks like they've attached a small stand to someone's house. Of course that's not the case. It houses a bar and a ticket office amongst other things. There are terraces at both the ends. One is covered, one is not. Utilita Arena. Utilita seems to have half of the arenas in the UK named after them. The Newcastle one looks completely different to the other Utilita arenas though. I noticed that the green arches of the roof resemble some of the nearby bridges that cross the River Tyne. That's a nice touch. The venue was originally known as Newcastle Arena, but getting a naming rights sponsor helps keep the lights on, especially when it's an energy company. Currently there's no permanent sporting tenant here, but it has in the past hosted both professional ice hockey and basketball teams. The basketball team moved out due to the fact that their schedule would often clash with concerts, and concerts took priority. St James's Park is unsurprisingly the biggest stadium in the city, and indeed the whole of northeastern England. It's known for its lopsided proportions, which were obviously not just some random design choice. It's like that because the club has limited land available to them at this site, and instead of moving out and building a new stadium further from the city centre, they opted to make the most of this plot of land that's seemingly situated in a prime location. Personally, I love that asymmetrical design, but some people don't. Another interesting tidbit is that the stand to the south is called the Gallows Gate Stand, because back in the day there were gallows situated back there, last used in 1844. In those days that was probably one of the most attended forms of outdoor entertainment. Kinda sad, especially considering that back then you could be hanged for something as trivial as stealing a sheep or a PlayStation 2. Thankfully nowadays sport has taken the place of public executions as the most popular form of outdoor entertainment. In every country, most countries. Vertu Motors Arena. The Newcastle Eagles of the British Basketball League used to play at Utilita Arena, as I hinted to earlier, but they've since built their own purpose-built home that is more appropriately sized, and more importantly, they own it. Ain't nobody gonna tell them they can't play here because there's a, I was gonna mention a Newcastle band, but the only one I can think of off the top of my head is Silverchair. However, that's a different Newcastle. Oh, Ant and Dec, yes. Nobody can tell the Newcastle Eagles they can't play because of an Ant and Dec concert. Other than that though, it is a modest little venue with not too many frills. Now we move from the Geordies over to the Mackems, Sunderland. Oh, Geordie, that's the band. Stadium of Light could be accused of plagiarism, in more ways than one. Firstly, the name Stadium of Light is the English translation of Estadio da Luz in Lisbon, the original version of which was built in 1954. Also, much like St James's Park, it has a lopsided layout, but that is of course just a coincidence. There are a few attributes that this place has and Newcastle doesn't. Firstly, it's sitting in a lovely spot above the River Weir, and the seats spell out Hawe the lads. Hawe in the local dialect means it's like some form of encouragement. Maybe it's short for have it away? No, that can't be it. It basically means come on, vamos, let's go, that kind of thing. A couple of years ago, Sunderland were in the third tier of English football. Some of the clubs in that league play in grounds with slightly more than 1/10 of this ground's capacity. I don't know what people from Whitley are called, but the team that plays at Whitley Bay Ice Rink is called the Whitley Warriors. They also played at Utilita Arena, albeit just for a few months after it opened. Whitley Bay Ice Rink might be more decrepit and has less impressive amenities, but it is much more appropriately sized. It's actually not quite as shabby on the inside as it appears from above. It's just a simple, compact, cozy little venue. No video boards or anything, but that's no big deal. It's one of just 2 permanent ice rinks in northeast England. Gateshead International Stadium. Knowing England, Gateshead could actually be pronounced Gateshead, or maybe Gloucestershire, but we'll stick with Gateshead. This is the largest track and field stadium in Tyne and Wear. It is also home to a football team. Interesting design there, a man with the wings of an aeroplane. This is clearly a nod to, well, it must have something to do with mental health awareness. You know, there are lots of people who believe they are dogs or whatever, which is relatively harmless, but believing you're an aeroplane can be deadly, especially if you live in a high-rise building. Alternatively, the stadium was built on the site of some chemical works, so perhaps this was a real man that was born with wings. Oh wait a minute, one of the club's nicknames is the Heed, so maybe it's pronounced Gateshead. And now for some honourable mentions. Sports Central is a complex on the campus of Northumbria University. It is yet another former home of the Newcastle Eagles. Currently it's home to Team Northumbria, a netball team. Gypsy's Green Recreation Ground. Wow, looks like we actually are at the other Newcastle. Nice bit of beach action. Although there aren't many gypsies in Australia. I wonder if this place's name is derived from the fact that gypsies used to hang out here back in the day. Probably. Newcastle Stadium is a nearly 100-year-old greyhound track. Up until a couple of years ago it hosted Speedway as well. Now it's just these guys. And next door to the Whitley Bay Ice Rink is Hillshead Park, a football stadium that can accommodate a little under 5,000. Home to Whitley Bay FC. Seems like a nice little ground. So there you have it. As for my favourite, I did like the green arches of Utilita Arena, but I have to go for St James's Park. It may look as though it recently suffered a stroke, but it seems like a great place to watch football or executions for that matter. Thanks for watching, have a good one.